You're listening to the Josh Parnell Leadership Podcast. We all have leadership within us, and once we understand how to challenge perceived limitations, we're able to influence those we're leading. Josh is a leadership coach, trainer, and speaker. He's also a veteran of the United States Air Force with over 20 years of leadership experience. Are you ready to transform your leadership skills by tapping into unrecognized potential to achieve limitless results? Let's get ready for liftoff. It's time to go from great to greater. Here's Josh in today's episode.
Welcome to the Josh Parnell Leadership Podcast. Whether it's inspirational guests like the one that we have today or jam-packed episodes regarding all things leadership, the goal here is quite simple: to reach people and build leaders. And we know that you're listening because you want to raise your leadership lid and live today to make an impact for tomorrow. So thank you for being here. Let's get into today's episode. Our guest today is a good friend of mine. I'm excited to have this guest on. He is a performance coach in the automotive repair industry. He's a father, a trainer, a speaker, and his newest title is the VP, the Vice President of Limitless Leadership. Our guest today is Mr. Brandon Jones. Brandon, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Josh. I am really excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited that you're here. I'm excited that you're now part of the team, the Limitless Leadership team. So that's exciting for both of us, I believe. And man, I'm just pumped for you to be able to share who you are, what you do, how you do it, and also why you do what you do. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and get into all those things. Tell the audience who Brandon Jones is.
I get to talk about myself, huh? One of the things I absolutely love. You can hear the sarcasm. Brandon Jones. I'm a coach in the automotive repair industry. Been doing this for most of my career in some way, shape, or form, whether it be from a sales leadership perspective. I've worked in a shop. I've owned a shop. I've worked in the back of the shop, worked on the front of the shop, been on the parts side, been on the OE side. I've seen a lot of different facets of the industry. And I think that really gives me a unique perspective as we talk about bringing impactful information to the people that we are working with. And on top of that, some of my qualifications, because let's talk about that, right? So I'm ASE certified in P2 and C1, which is just the ASE certification in the parts side of it, and an ASE certification in the service consultant side of it. On top of that, I went to Northwood University in Midland, Michigan, which is the University of the Automotive Aftermarket, and I obtained what we call a AAP, which is an Automotive Aftermarket Professional. I sit on the Auto Care Education Board for the industry, and what's really cool about that is we get to impact the industry from an educational standpoint, but essentially nationally. So this is an association that is out of Washington, and we get to have that kind of impact on the industry from that kind of level, which is really neat. And real excited to be here. So,
well, we're glad that you're here, Brandon. You're also one of the keynote speakers at this year's Ratchet and Wrench Management Conference in Orlando coming up this September, and we're going to speak more about that particular event towards the end of this episode. If you're listening to this episode, you might have realized or noticed by now that this is probably going to be more geared towards individuals in the automotive repair industry. However, this is still a leadership podcast. We're going to talk about all things leadership. We're going to be talking about people in addition to the processes. Something that Brandon and I have discussed is, with our slogan with Limitless Leadership, our slogan is now people plus process equal profit. So as a leadership coach, I'm bringing the people side of things. As a performance coach, Brandon is bringing the performance side of things. But we all know that people plus process brings a profit. And so asking for the listeners to hang on, even if you're not in the automotive repair industry, Brandon still can and will deliver a lot of valuable leadership content for you. But
we'll throw a couple nuggets in there.
We'll throw some nuggets in here and there. But also, Brandon, so talk about your background. You mentioned that you owned a shop before. Most recently, you were with Christian Brothers Automotive, where you and I had the opportunity to work together. And then what for the audience, because I love this story, for the audience, talk about what led you to Christian Brothers, in addition to a little bit more about your background.
Yeah, so let's go from there. So I was working with an automotive company in Louisiana, and loving what I did. And I took our entire leadership field team to a leadership conference in Houston, Texas, which, as some of you folks know, that's the headquarters of Christian Brothers Automotive. And the only other automotive company that was at this conference, and it happened to be the John Gordon Power Positive Leadership Conference, which I think we both share a very warm place in our heart with John Gordon.
Yeah.
And I took my entire field team there, and the only other automotive team that their company that was there was Christian Brothers Automotive, and you, Mr. Josh Parnell. And in complete transparency, Josh, I don't know if you know this or not, I went up to you to try to sell you. As the true salesman that I am, I don't know if you know that. But anyways, we just connected, and we exchanged contact information. And, I saw a few months later that you had an opening, and we talked it through. And that's kind of how I came to Christian Brothers and to working with you initially. And, you talk about a God moment right there. I mean, man.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. The way things have to, the way things transpire in our lives, it's easy to look back and realize all of these specific things had to happen in order for me to be or to get where I'm at right now. And even for you to get to that conference is another God moment. And so go ahead and share that story, just how you got to that conference in Houston.
Yeah, so that's another great story too, because we're talking a number of years ago. My first exposure to Christian Brothers Automotive was as a salesman for a spark plug company. And I was down here in Houston working with a parts company. And we were just going into different shops, educating customers and on, OE brands, spark plugs, and all of that stuff that goes into making those cold calls. But what we did is the salesman I was working with goes, I'm going to show you something you've never seen before. And I was like, at this point in my career, I think I'd been in close to 1,000 different repair shops and worked with, pretty close to the same amount, about 1,000 different repair shops. And I kind of said, okay, we'll see. You're going to show me something. And we put a small wager on it. We talked about lunch. And he took me to a shop in the Woodlands, which is a suburb here of Houston, and it was Christian Brothers. And I'll be honest, I was completely blown away, right? That was quite something. You had a clean facility. I mean, professional people that were interested in me personally. And I don't know if we have any shop owners that are listening to this, but as a salesman and from a shop perspective, like we're not disruptive, right? We don't come into your place of business and completely disrupt your workflow or anything like that, right?
More sarcasm.
Yeah, more sarcasm. So, but anyways, I felt very welcomed. So that resonated with me, and I remembered that. And fast forward to a couple of years later, probably a low point in my leadership career. I was a regional manager, and I had just gotten essentially forced upon, or essentially it was just handed to me, the entire country for the company I was with at the time. And it wasn't necessarily because I was ready for that. It was because there was no one else. Everyone else had quit. And I am all of maybe 3 months into this new role. And so not only taking on a regional responsibility, which is enough in itself, now I'm taking on a national responsibility, which encompasses like 30 salesmen, obviously coast to coast. So, and the company I was with was broken. We'll just say broken. And when I say broken, I mean like things would ship to Florida that were supposed to go to Minnesota, or New York that was supposed to go to California. Like processes were very broken. and the team just had blinders and didn't want to change. So as you can imagine, the phone calls that I was receiving as the only leader left in the company was not a pleasant conversation. I was getting screamed at pretty much on a daily basis by people and things outside of my control. I was in a bookshop in Western Illinois. So if you haven't picked up on the accent, I am from just outside Chicago, the western suburbs. And I was in a bookshop one weekend with the family. And I always say that this book literally fell off the shelf, but chances are I was in such a bad mood, I probably kicked the shelf and it fell off on my foot. But anyways, the book that I am referencing and that caught my eye was The Power of Positive Leadership by John Gordon. And that was my first exposure to John Gordon. I picked up the book and I just couldn't put it down. And that was about 2017 timeframe. And that completely changed my outlook, completely changed my perspective on leadership, because I went from thinking about this from in the moment to looking at this from a more broad perspective of how can we do this in a more positive manner? How does this correlate to everyone I'm leading, everyone I'm talking to, every conversation that I'm having? So I made a point right then and there to kind of change my perspective. I think it helped. I mean, I think I made a difference. I made a conscious change to be a more positive leader. But once again, that plays right into our story that we talked about before, how me and you first met, because that is why I chose to bring my team to the Power of Positive Leadership, that leadership conference in Houston, was because how much that book and that leadership perspective influenced and impacted me. And so as we talk about, God moments and kind of really going full circle, I mean, that's where it's at. I mean, crazy.
So let me ask you, Brandon, because you talked about leadership and how impactful that book specifically and how impactful John Gordon, which, by the way, John, if you're listening, you need to sponsor this podcast.
Come on, John.
And we're helping right here. Okay, so, but let me ask you, what does leadership mean to you? In your own words, what is leadership?
Well, I think it's John Maxwell that says leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And I look at that as, that is truly what leadership is. I think it's not being afraid to get in the trenches with the people and work with them. I also like the term shepherd leadership. So I look at the term shepherd leadership, and there's a number of principles that go into it, being a shepherd leader. And we won't get into those today, but being a shepherd leader essentially is being a servant leader, and that's somebody who is going to walk alongside of you to help bring you up to that next level. And I really think that's, ever since that changed, like we talked about in about 2017 that I had, that was the leadership direction that I wanted to be. I wanted to be somebody who was a good shepherd to those that he or she led, and in my case, that I led, and I wanted to be a positive influence and leader to those that I led.
And I think that's also what being a good coach is all about too, because we're able to walk alongside folks who may have blind spots, who may not know what they don't know. They may be looking for direction. They're certainly looking for clarity. And, as I've shared many times on this podcast before, the two things that we as coaches want to create is safety and trust, so that we can provide two more things, which is clarity and direction. And so being able to provide clarity and direction from a coaching standpoint is very much like a servant leadership type of approach, where we're truly working for our clients. We're truly working for the individual because we have their best interest in mind, and we're trying to help them grow and develop. And coaching brings in that accountability piece to it as well. So if I were to ask you, Brandon, something that you and I both collectively do as a pair is we have something in leadership and performance that specifically the automotive repair industry doesn't have. There's a lot of great performance coaching services in the automotive repair industry, and we're both big believers and friends with many of them. But what separates you as a performance coach from the rest?
Yeah, well, I think it goes back to what you opened this segment out with, is people plus process equals profit. The first section of that is the people. we have to start with our people that are not only in our shop, but in our business and the people that we are serving, right? We have to pour into the people that essentially are pouring into the people. So what I mean by that is we have to, give guidance, we have to influence, we have to direct, and we have to allow the ability for them to make mistakes in a comfortable environment, the people that work for us. And in turn, if we take care of them, they're going to take care of the customers, the clients.
I believe that, you mentioned earlier John Maxwell's quote on leadership, which is leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And I firmly believe that we cannot influence if we cannot connect. And we can connect through three ways. We can connect through authenticity, humility, and vulnerability. So when both you and I are showing up, and I mean showing up for our clients, we are both moving forward in a way of authenticity, humility, and vulnerability. So early on, what we try to focus on is the ability to connect so that we can influence. We can connect when we're establishing that groundwork or that firm foundation of safety and trust so that we can provide clarity and direction. If I'm going to ask you in regards to the fact that we both offer this combination, if you will, let me ask you, Brandon, how does performance coaching help with leadership?
Yeah, I think the two kind of work hand in hand and marry each other very, very well. And, kind of like you were saying earlier, I think this is a void in our industry. And I say industry, I mean automotive repair, because you have leadership coaches that are focused just on growing the people. And then, like you said, there's performance coaches out there for the automotive industry, and we know a lot of them, and they're very good at what they do, but they forget about the people part of that. And I think what we're talking about is marrying those two, the leadership and the performance side of that, and creating something special. Because that is when we talk about producing a well-rounded training and coaching program, I think that's what it is, right? You got to start with the people, you got to pour into the people, but then you have to set goals on the performance side. You got to have KPIs that you're talking to, and in trying to influence and pulling those different levers as we talk about growing and influencing those key performance indicators.
And it's customized too. Yeah. So our clients don't feel like a number. Yeah. Too often, and even in the industry, something that we both share is this concept of how the guest experience should be viewed at from a relationship standpoint first, rather than a transaction. And I think too many of us have this number in mind and the key performance indicators at top of mind in sales and transactions. And while we know that sales are important, I mean, you're a master sales coach and sales trainer, and your unstoppable sales process is actually going to be the discussion at Right Wrench. And while we understand that sales are important, we know that we need to make a profit in order to stay in business. We also know that if we serve our clients and take care of them and customize this to where it's not a cookie cutter type of coaching service,
100%,
then they're going to get that byproduct. When we serve our guest, the transaction's a byproduct. When we serve our clients, the improvement in performance is a byproduct.
Yeah. So I think what you're just saying, as we customize this to your needs, that's the impact. That's the part that we really get traction on. And just as we talk about that, I mean, there's a number of KPIs that we can actually pull the lever and influence.
Let's talk about them.
So, we can talk about ARO. I can tell you that the folks that have worked with us have grown their average repair order by 22.4%. I mean, that's not a small chunk, right? That's pretty massive.
Yeah.
And profit, right? That's another key performance indicator that we want to talk about and look to improve. And we know that people that have worked with us have grown that number by 3.4%. 3.4%.
Massive.
That is life changing potentially.
And you're highlighting too. There's a number of other key metrics: sales success increase of 10%, bay efficiency increase of 22%, overall sales 34%. These are all the numbers that are tangible. These are tangible numbers that are felt. They're seen in the business through performance coaching. When we're pairing the performance coaching with the leadership side of things, we're talking about how to influence culture and how to provide effective communication and properly delegate and improve your time management. That's really where when we see the leadership and performance begin to marry each other, you got people plus process. Profit is a byproduct. I mean,
yeah, we don't have to spend a whole lot of time talking about profit because if we're doing the people part right, we're doing the process part right. Just like you said, profit is a byproduct.
Hey, the analogy I love to share. Speaking of Chicago, you mentioned you're from Chicago. I'm a big
all day,
big basketball fan. And growing up, Michael Jordan was my guy. I mean, he was the guy.
He's the GOAT.
He is the GOAT. And if you think otherwise, please DM me. Let me know. We can debate it, but really, there's no debate. But anyway, so something I like to share is how when Phil Jackson officially took over as the head coach of the Chicago Bulls, this was in the late '80s. Michael Jordan had already won Rookie of the Year. He was already a 5-time All-Star. He already won his first Most Valuable Player award when Phil Jackson officially took over as the coach. So by many accounts, Jordan was already the greatest basketball player in the world, but Jordan was also very coachable. And when you find someone who is coachable and willing to put himself under the scrutiny of others like Phil Jackson, because Coach Jackson could see what Jordan couldn't, incredible things begin to happen. And when you have people who are coachable and who have that right attitude, and then you marry those people to a process that's proven. In this case, Phil Jackson brought the triangle offense, a proven process that worked. Man, that's when, and Craig Rochelle, he'll say, when the leader gets better, everyone gets better.
Everyone gets
when
better.
Michael Jordan gets better, his teammates get better.
Yeah.
He went on to win 5 more MVPs and a total of 6 championships, but it was because people plus process equal championships, or in other words, profit. And so, man, I love talking about this with you, Brandon. I think I truly do believe that you are the best at what you do. I know I'm biased, but I believe that. Let me ask you, for anyone who's considering using our Limitless Leadership coaching services, what can they expect?
I think you're going to get 2 industry experts that are pretty good at what they do. And like we've been talking about this entire episode, we're focusing on different things, but we both have the end in mind, and like we have the same end and result that we're trying to drive towards. And I think of every time I go back to this and I talk about what we're doing is Dave Ramsey says there's a distinct difference between someone who is selling and someone who is serving. And I look at this as we're producing and we're helping develop and train folks in the automotive industry to be well-rounded individuals that can go out and serve. And when I love that word serve, because I think that is something that's missing in our industry. And if we can focus on helping them serve their clients, their customers, their guests better than anyone else, that's going to grow their business.
At the end of the day, I love that you referenced the end in mind. In the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, we know that one of those 7 habits is to begin with the end in mind. Mm-hmm. And many of us actually do that regularly. What we fail to do, a lot of us miss the mark on this, is we set goals. The end in mind is the goal. That's the result. We set goals. It's easy to set goals. This year, I want to lose 10 pounds. I want to get out of debt, and I want to run a marathon. I just set 3 goals in 3 seconds. But now I need to shift my focus from the end in mind onto the steps I need to take in order to achieve that goal. And so I think that one thing that we can deliver, and we do often deliver, is through the customized personal touch of these coaching services, we're able to help shift the focus from the end in mind. So we're setting goals, but now we're working with this individual consistently, which is important because consistency is what's going to keep us going, because repetition breeds retention. Mm-hmm. And consistency is often what allows us to keep going, because the moment we stop coaching, this is where accountability comes into play, because this is where the client can very easily say, hey, you know what? I'm not really being held accountable like I was anymore. And the easy thing to do is the easy thing to do. And oftentimes what we see is when someone begins to not have coaching, that's where they fall into old habits.
Bad habits.
Yeah. And so they're falling into old habits, which are comfortable. I mean, and we know that growth and comfort can't coexist. But the analogy I often share is think about any sports team, and even if it's an individual sport. I cannot think of a sport where, whether it's a team sport or an individual sport, they don't have a coach.
Yeah, correct.
If we're talking about if we're talking about two football teams who show up on the field and one of those teams has a coach and one doesn't, would you believe that that the team without the coach is at a disadvantage?
Oh, 100%. And I think that's a great reference point. You look at an automotive repair business, right? If you have somebody that's actively being coached and that's leading and driving results in their shop as compared to someone who is not, like, I'm taking the preparation and the results-driven performance coaching and leadership coaching all day, every day. Like that is a well-oiled, well-run, potentially machine as compared to the flip side of that, right? And just like you said, they could do one thing one way, another thing another day, and it's because they fall into bad habits because it's easy, right? It's a lot easier for me to stay in bed all day and watch TV than it is for me to go to the gym in the morning.
Yeah.
You all right?
Take action. Right? Yeah. Take action. If you're a shop owner, if you're leading a team, the encouragement that I'd ask you to consider is, ask yourself this question: what is preventing me from helping my team go from great to greater? In most cases, the answer that I get is time. I just don't have time. And so through Limitless Leadership Coaching, what you're getting is two individuals who are both experts in their field, respectfully, and leadership and performance, when we're combining these two together, we're giving you the gift of time. Allow us to take this weight off your shoulders. Allow us to give you back the gift of time, because you have two individuals who truly are passionate about this industry and about your growth and development to help your team members go from great to greater through leadership and performance coaching.
I can remember, Jess, if I can jump in real quick, please. I can remember a mentor of mine a number of years ago said, what is the greatest asset for anybody in any environment? And I had to think about that because, I was young in my career, young in my development. And initially I said money, and it really isn't. It's time. And, because we don't we need profit to live, but we shouldn't live for profits.
Yeah, that's good.
So I just wanted to jump in.
No, I think that's great. I think for a lot of business owners, there's so many things that are going on. I mean, and we're just talking about the business. We're not even talking about the fact that you also have a life outside of your business. You have families, and we feel like we're kind of saying or trying to say yes to everyone and everything, and inadvertently we're saying no to priorities.
We're wearing too many hats, and that's
Correct.
Why when we talk about giving you back the gift of time, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Let's remove a couple of those hats so you can spend the time with folks that you need to spend time with, and that's your friends and family.
Love that. Hey, if everything is a priority, nothing's a priority.
100%.
So let's get that time back. So lastly, Brandon, as we begin to wrap up this episode, I mentioned this earlier in the intro, but you are speaking at this year's Ratchet and Wrench Management Conference in Orlando coming up this September. So first, man, congratulations. That's exciting. That's
Thank you.
To me, that's a big deal. I think that's a great opportunity. But talk about it. So what exactly are you going to be speaking on at this conference?
Yeah. So if you're in the industry, in the automotive industry, and you are looking for a conference to attend, this is going to be the conference. So there's going to be a lot of good training events. There's going to be a phenomenal amount of networking opportunities. There's going to be a trade show. You're going to be able to get in front of vendors and people that can actually help and grow your shop, right? Like there's going to be a lot of collective minds in one room, which I think of any vendor or trade show or conference, that is the goal. Let's get in front of like-minded people and work to grow ourself and our network individually or collectively together. And I'm really excited to be partnered up with Ratchet and Wrench, and we're going to be talking about the unstoppable sales process. And, I think you guys heard a little earlier, one of my passions is sales. I've been in sales leadership pretty much my entire career in some way, shape, or form in this industry. And now I get to share some of my best practices and some of the things that I know to be successful, that I've seen be successful, that I've used, and that has been successful in my career. I get to share some of those things with the hundreds, thousands of people that are going to be at this conference. And I hope some people are interested and are going to use this as, hey, I didn't even know Ratchet and Wrench had a management conference September 12th through the 14th in Orlando, Florida. Well, now you do. And guess what? I even have a discount code they can use. So if you use my name, Brandon, when you go to register for the Ratchet and Wrench conference in Orlando, Florida, you're going to get $100 off. So, and please, by all means, if you're down there, come say hi to me. Like, I would love to shake your hand, meet you, and just talk.
Love it. Love
Here
it.
to help.
Yeah. So, and we're excited for you. We're both going to be in attendance there at the conference. Now, for those listening, I want to ask, how can our audience get in touch with you? I'm gonna go ahead and say they can go through limitlessleadership.co to get in touch with both of us, but you specifically, Brandon, I want our audience members to reach out to you. How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I'm available on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, all the socials.
Awesome. So if you're listening, connect with Brandon. I promise you it will be well worth it. Brandon, dude, this is not going to be your first, this is not going to be your only time on the podcast. Of course, it is your first time, but not your only time. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Josh. I'm excited for the things we're doing for the industry.
Love it, man. I am too. And if you like this episode, please consider leaving a review. The more reviews we have, the more these episodes get pushed out and allows us to reach people and build leaders. Again, people plus process equal profit. Reach out to us. Thank you for tuning into the Josh Parnell Leadership Podcast. Have a great day, everyone. Don't forget to smile today. Tell your loved ones how much they mean to you. I'm Josh Parnell, reminding you to keep leading well.